Thank you so much for being on the programme. I'm keen, of course, to talk about your brief, about climate, about COP, but before we get to that, I'm just keen to talk about Archbishop Welby, who's obviously resigned today. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think obviously the first thing to say is our thoughts are with all the victims and survivors on this issue, which has been going on for such a long time, and I think many of them have not had closure. Whether today will bring that or not, I don't know, but our thoughts are with them anyway. Fundamentally, the issue of who leads the Church of England is rightly a matter for the Church of England, and we won't be getting involved in that. As a government, it's for them now to decide what the next processes are to choose the next Archbishop.
Is there questions that we should be asking about how our institutions deal with these kind of terrible allegations, reports, and then, of course, facts that actually happen? You know, the thing that's really sort of struck me about this case is the sheer number of young boys who are involved in it. 30 in Winchester, up to 100 in Africa. And yet, this is something that for decades there has been no justice. I mean, we need to ask some real questions, don't we, about, you know, yes, the Church of England, but also our institutions and our society.
Well, I think that is a really important point. And look, we've seen so many of these reports over so many years now of historical abuse, but also of more recent abuse. This isn't something that is consigned just to the past. We do need to do much more. I think the danger is often these reports are published and there's a lot of scrutiny at the time. The actual implementation of the learning maybe isn't always followed through. But crucially, I listened to a number of the victims today talking about this. Their point is this is about culture as much as procedures and regulations. It's important, of course, that we do everything we can to improve safeguarding procedures in all organisations across all our public life. But the culture is really important as well, in that sense that it's everyone's responsibility to keep people safe. And that, you know, you can't turn a blind eye, you can't think someone else is going to deal with this, I don't need to do it. Everyone has a responsibility here. I think that's a lesson not just for the church, but for all organisations to make sure we can keep people safe.
It is a really good point. The other thing as well is the police, because yes, the church may not have made official complaints to them early, but there were reports made to the police and not that much seems to have been done for a while.
I don't know the details of the investigation. I think, look, with all of these cases, one of the things that I find hardest, and I've had casework from constituents about this, is that sense of not being believed. And we know that that's the case for victims now as well. This isn't just historical. And I think it's really important that when someone makes a complaint or when there's obvious signs of this, that safeguarding is taken seriously and that people don't assume that these aren't important or serious moments. They really are. And there's always, when we see reports about issues like this, there's always missed opportunities. Of course, those missed opportunities represent more victims, and we need to do much more to tackle that.
Yeah, particularly when you think about how difficult it must be for these people to make a complaint, to go public, to face up to their abuse, particularly if they're young. As well. Thank you very much for talking about that. I know that you're here to talk about COP and climate change. Just talk me through what's been announced today.
So today was hugely important. The Prime Minister is at the COP conference demonstrating that Britain is once again leading on climate change across the world and the change that we need to see. He's announced today that our target will be 81% of reductions in emissions. That's an ambitious target. It's one the Climate Change Committee has said is ambitious, but also has said it is achievable. And everything that we've been doing since we came into government in the 4 months that we've been here has been about moving towards that climate leadership again. But crucially recognising that our economic growth is also our climate justice point. And so today we've also announced a Clean Industry Bonus, which is about trying to make sure we bring as much of the supply chain to this country so that the clean power infrastructure that we're going to build over the next 5 years also brings the jobs to this country and delivers the economic justice that we need across the country as well.
Keir Starmer was obviously at COP. Were you disappointed to not see more leaders from some of the world's largest economies there?
Well, it's obviously for each individual country to decide how they want to participate. There's representations from every country at COP. I think it was really important that the Prime Minister went this year to demonstrate that after a sort of period of declining enthusiasm, I think it's fair to say, by the previous government in this, that we were back taking this issue seriously. And look, these COP conferences are really difficult. What you need to do is bring together as broad a coalition as possible to achieve what we need to do.
Yeah, that's the point, isn't it? It's a bit harder to do that if, you know, Keir Starmer's one of the only leaders from the big countries there, isn't it?
Well, but I think there is a consensus on where we need to go with this, and the COP is an important moment.
Is there a consensus, genuinely? Because I'll be honest, from where I'm sitting, it looks a bit shaky, particularly with what's happening in the States.
I think shaky is a good definition, but that doesn't mean that all hope is lost, and I think we do need to work together now to make sure that we hit these targets. Look, we're in the most decisive of decades on this question. We're getting perilously close to that 1.5 degree warming that becomes catastrophic for us as a planet. We've all got to work together to make that happen. I think that's why it's so important that whatever other countries do, Britain is demonstrating that we are once again wanting to lead on these issues. And look, there is also some self-interest in this for this country, because as I say, the economic growth that we want to see is also driven by the transition to clean power by 2030. It's why we're not agnostic as a government on an industrial strategy, partly to get us to clean power by 2030, partly to make sure we deliver skills and jobs for the future.
While I've got you, can I also ask you on assisted dying? Because it's something that I know all MPs are going to be wrestling with at the minute. It's such an important vote coming up, and everyone's going to have a different opinion on it, a different belief on it from their own experiences, their own beliefs. Where do you stand on the issue?
I do really wrestle with it, actually. I don't have a firm, fixed view on it at all, and I know, speaking to a number of my colleagues, they're in the same place. And I've had more emails on this subject from my constituents than any other, and probably about 50-50 on both sides. Some with really personal stories about why they think this is necessary, and others with real personal experiences, particularly from the medical profession, of why they think this is a challenge. I think ultimately I'll vote against the legislation when it comes, because I'm not convinced that the legislation provides enough safeguards, and I am worried about the kind of slippery slope that we potentially get. But I also absolutely recognise those who are suffering at the moment and who want to have some control over the end of their life. I think the important thing is we don't think it's assisted dying or nothing else. We need to invest in the palliative care that gives people a good death, and that is a really important thing. I also think what's really important about this whole conversation is we talk about death a lot more, because we talk about healthcare a lot. We don't talk about the inevitable, which is we're all going to have an end of life at some point, and that should be as caring as possible, and we need to invest in the system to deliver that.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.